Hi guys, hope you're all well. It's Friday again, so you know what it is. It's Fibro Friday. So first of all, I have some news. We are starting the second fundraiser for Fibromyalgia awareness because Fibromyalgia Awareness Week is in literally just over a month, and we are doing a new quick paint challenge with some lovely people here on Instagram, and I really hope that you look forward to it and that you enjoy it, and all of the funds will be destined to Fibromyalgia Awareness UK. So just making you aware that that's happening, so keep an eye out. But also, as you probably know, I am carrying on with my fibromyalgia symptoms breakdown videos. We've already talked about chronic fatigue and we've talked about chronic pain. So today I wanted to give you a bit more insight into a common word that you probably hear us people with fibromyalgia talk about all the time, and that probably doesn't make any sense to you whatsoever, which is fibro fog or fibromyalgia fog. So I'll try and explain what this means to you guys, but I also want you to understand that it's not just something that people with fibromyalgia suffer from. It affects a lot of people with chronic illness and neurological conditions, and it is very similar to some other stuff that affect people with arthritis or with some mental health conditions, particularly PTSD and other things that cause pain overall. So what we mean by fibro fog is some cognitive disruptions that our brain suffers when processing information. So normally our brains operate, just like they do. They receive information, we process it, we understand what we're reading, what we're seeing, what we're feeling, what temperature it is. We understand what we're saying. We don't have to think about words, they just happen. But some days when we wake up, or sometimes halfway through the day if something has triggered it, our brain starts malfunctioning and causing this fog. And fog is really the best word to describe it because it's not like suddenly we don't know what we're doing or how things are happening or anything like that. That's not really what the case is. But everything just kind of feels hazy. So we may know what words we're using or what we're trying to say, but it takes a lot of time, and like it feels like we need to rummage through our brain and scour through our brain to fully put that information across or even process information. When we have these issues with fibrofog, we become really forgetful as well. So we may just not remember what we ate. We may forget to eat, in fact. We may not be able to process basic stuff that we can do on a day-to-day basis normally without any problem. So I have been known to literally be trying to say something and it's like, what's the word, or what was about to say? And sure, this happens to everyone, so I'm not suggesting that it's special, but imagine that that happens to you not just like a spur of the moment thing, but quite frequently and completely outside of your control with stuff that you should be able to remember, like, is this a necklace? Is that what you call it? Or you see what I mean? Basic things like that that really shouldn't cause you that much trouble remembering or even just processing. Some days when I have fibrofog, I really struggle reading. Like, I love reading. And as you guys know, I'm a historian, so, I kind of gotta read a lot. But some days, generally, just picking up a book and just understanding what the words are, it's not just difficult, it's just a struggle. Like, when you go to bed and you start reading a book and you're starting to drift off, so you need to read the same line over and over because the information is kind of not sticking. It's kind of like that, but it kind of hurts your brain when you have fibrofog and you're trying to understand and I'm not talking about anything complicated, like literally imagine just trying to read this thing that says blue tack, right? And I would be like, blue tack, blue tack, blue tack, blue tack. That's literally how it feels when you have fibro fog. Something as simple that you are perfectly aware of, that is not rocket science. um, suddenly becomes a challenge. So getting the right words is hard. Understanding information properly is hard. Remembering things properly is hard. So if I have fibro fog, one of the things that I'm pretty open about it is I sort of have a disclaimer for people like, by the way, my brain is not entirely with it, so please correct me if I misunderstand something, or if you're explaining something to me and in a couple of days' time you ask me to tell you what happened and I just got my wires crossed, because it's it's important, I think, for people to understand that this is not a miscommunication or a communication problem that we're causing at all, on purpose, but that happens. And the other thing that I also want you to be aware of is that normally we can tell if it's a fibro fog day, because our brains normally don't operate that way. But sometimes the fibro fog is so intense that even just trying to explain that, it's quite difficult. So I hope you understand that we don't mean any offense when we may misunderstand things. And I'm not trying to make excuses for people getting things wrong or making mistakes or things like that. It's not what I'm trying to tell you. But if you think we're struggling, or you can sort of, I think most of the time you can almost see it in our eyes. It's like we're genuinely analyzing every single word that comes out of our mouth. That may give you a pretty good clue that we are suffering from fibro fog. Another thing that happens quite often when we have fibro fog is that our speech slows down. And I don't mean like sort of you're talking and then you kind of slow down to make things more clear, but like you start sort of double guessing, and we start speaking a bit robotic because it's like we're trying to give our brain time to think, not just to think, but to make sure that what we're saying is actually what we want to say. Because sometimes we would have the words, but the information is not communicating to our mouths properly. So it's like, am I trying to say tongue in here, or twist, or turn? It could be any of those. Good luck trying to figure it out. So that's kind of how Fibrofog works overall. It can be very disrupting, um, to say the least, when we have this, and it's difficult to communicate. But actually, for some people, Fibrofog actually extends not just to their basic cognitive functions, but just the ability to operate overall. Some cases of Fibrofog can be so severe that will be crippling from a mental and from an emotional point of view. And it is normally when we have fibro fog that the vast majority, or a fair amount of our emotional frustration comes from, because deep down we're perfectly aware that we should be able to understand and comprehend and do everything that we're doing. So it doesn't just come down to understanding information and stuff like that. It kind of starts taking over everything that we do, and it creates just a general, like I said, everything becomes hazy. So I may, I cook, I know how to cook a dish, I've done it 1,000 times. On a day with fibro fog, 9 times out of 10 that dish is gonna come out wrong because I forgot to put salt on it, or because even though I knew what the motions were supposed to be, the information that my brain is sending to my hands or to my feet to pick things from the kitchen and stuff, it may just not work. It may not be clear. So I may miss a step that I didn't mean to. Like, I knew I had to do it, but it kind of just got confusing, and I just didn't do it. So I've had moments when I've tried to put pasta to boil. I didn't turn on the hob. So there was a pan with water and salt and everything, but it wasn't boiling. Or where I thought I had put a timer and I didn't, and then the pasta is undercooked. Or where like I said, I generally thought I had put salt, and that's just with simple things. Just imagine anything that goes more complicated than that. Fibro fog is particularly disruptive for me when I'm trying to do manual stuff. And I think you'll find out a lot of people find that too. particularly when doing things like hobby or doing things like sports. I play badminton, I skate. So because everything is hazy, like your reactions obviously slow down. You're just, it's kind of like, on a normal day, I am a Windows 10, and on a day with Fibro Fog, I am an M-DOS. Um, perhaps a Windows 95 at best. So that's literally how it is. And you just can't cope with all of the stimuli and all of the things that you normally can do. So it is very frustrating. And if it gets to that extent of it actually starts impacting your physical input, that can normally trigger pain and fatigue as well. So Fibro Fog is usually very much associated with fatigue because it kind of feels like you're doing 3 times the effort to think and do anything. And it's not because you're tired, it's because it's genuinely taking you that much longer to do something. And therefore you end up pretty tired at the end of it. It's like I said, imagine that life is being run through a Windows 10 computer and it's running smoothly, and then suddenly it's like everything that was happening in life gets downgraded to a machine from the late 80s, early 90s, and the machine is just gonna be like uh, 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 and not be able to cope with it. So it ends up affecting everything. So those 3 things, chronic fatigue, pain, and Fibro Fog, can usually be intertwined, and they can create pretty vicious cycles between them. So I hope that kind of makes a bit more sense as to what we mean and why the word fog is really more representative than what we feel, because it's not exactly like being confused. We can be confused as well with Fibro Fog, just because information can be a bit too overwhelming, and it's like, what? But it's not like when you are confused about something that you find yourself completely dumbfounded. It's more like you're trying really hard to make something work and to understand what you're doing and do stuff, but it ain't happening. So that's Fibro Fog, explained perhaps at a more digestible pace than what we've been able to do before. And like I said, it doesn't happen just to us. It happens to a lot of other people with chronic illness, with mental health illness, but particularly with neurological conditions, because it's like with pain. If there is a disruption on how the information is happening in your brain, that information can be pain, or it can be just basic human activities, and it becomes just really hard to control. And I think, at least for me, Fibro Fog is perhaps one of the hardest things to cope with, because you never know when it's going to strike. You maybe can try and predict it, but it's pretty random, and it can be very disruptive. So if you know someone with fibromyalgia, try and be as supportive as you can on those days, particularly when trying to get them to do anything that requires several steps, because it may be hard for them to follow up. Don't give them hard information to process on that day. Like, just be gentle, make everything very basic, plain English, direct instructions that cannot be open to interpretation in any way, shape, or form. Just be direct and to the point, and you would be really, really helping us. And just help them pace themselves. It's really hard when we have Fibro Fog to pace ourselves properly. We may not become aware that we are overexerting ourselves, or that as much as we're trying, it simply isn't happening, and that can be really frustrating. So that's a way you can help, and that would really make a difference for us. So that's all for today. I hope that helps, and seriously, keep an eye out, because exciting stuff is happening, and yeah, it's gonna be really good. I hope that we can raise just as much money as last time. So yeah, and just hit me up if you want to be involved, and have a lovely weekend. Bye.